It's not a kitten video. It's not a puppy video. This isn't a video you watch on the fly. If we're trying to imitate Jesus Christ, we have to give him time. We have to let things settle, not just on the fly. So here's what I'm asking you to do. Go into your room, close your door, go outside, sit by yourself, sit with another person. You and I are invited to imitate Christ in all things. He literally is the living icon of the Beatitudes. So I'm asking you to listen to this, not in passing, not just kind of half-heartedly. Be open to the Lord who wants to speak to us through this Beatitude. Some years ago when I was in seminary, each night I would read a short story from a book called The Saints Show Us Christ. The publisher is Ignatius Press, and basically told short stories of the saints that would captivate me each night. Like at that time we had roommates in seminary, and I'm like, my roommate's name was Damien. I'm like, Damien, you got to listen to the story. And I'll never forget the first time I heard the story of people I'd never heard of, St. Isaac Jogues, St. John de Brebeuf, and I'm like, who are these people? And they were French Jesuit missionaries who came to share the gospel with the Native Americans in North America, including in Montreal and Quebec and in the state of New York. St. Isaac Jogues was martyred in New York, and after hearing the story of him like being tortured and escaped and ultimately martyred, I remember saying like, how come I've never heard his story? And then I read the story of Jean de Brebeuf, Father Isaac Jogues' mentor, who was a towering figure both in height, he was 6'5", but he also was tall in spiritual stature. He was literally captured by the Iroquois, and for 17 hours he endured just the most awful tortures. They still know the place where it happened. And everything from, literally, they burned his face. They tied him to a stake. They cut out his tongue. They would take red-hot hatchets that were in the fire and place it on the most sensitive parts of his body. At a certain point, they were pouring boiling hot water over him to mock baptism. They were doing awful things, and it lasted for over 17 hours. Toward the end, he's still encouraging them, and he was given this supernatural grace. Toward the end, literally, they cut off his feet. After that, they cut out his heart and literally ate it because they had never seen so much courage, and he had courage. And I remember reading about this. This happened in Midland, Canada, which is about 2 hours north of Toronto. They know the place where it happened. And I'm saying, and Jesus said, blessed are those who are persecuted. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Now, for most of us, frankly, this is not a threat or daily worry. But frankly, it is for a good portion of the world, more than we realize. Do you know that approximately 215 million Christians now experience high, very high, or extreme levels of persecution? That means 1 in 12 Christians live where Christianity is illegal, forbidden, or punished, according to Open Doors researchers. According to the figures of the Center for the Study of World Christianity, in 2016 alone, right 3 years ago, 90,000 Christians were killed for their faith. 90,000 Christians were killed for their faith. Between 500,000 and 600,000 Christians are enduring harassment or restrictions for practicing their faith. That's 1 in 6 Christians in Africa, 1 in 3 Christians in Asia, and 1 in 21 Christians in South America. What are some of the countries where it's dangerous to practice your faith? North Korea always has the top, right? They're among the most merciless with most people, but especially people of faith. What about our trading partner of China? There's many priests, bishops, and the lay faithful that have been tortured, put in prison. They haven't been seen in years. That's China. They're our trading partner. What about Afghanistan, where Christianity is forbidden? You'd be taking your life, if you convert from being a Muslim to Christianity, you are putting your life in your hands. It's practically a death sentence. That's the same with Syria, Pakistan, Iran, Iraq, Yemen, Indonesia, Somalia, Ethiopia, Libya, and many, many places. Do we realize this? There's a country that I don't know if most of us even heard of. It's called Eritrea. The government was known for going house to house and arresting and imprisoning Christians and placing them in awful conditions. Eritrea is basically like the North Korea of Africa. It's awful. Christians have the most difficult time there. In Pakistan, regularly, they will have people who will mob Christians, accuse them of blasphemy against Muhammad, and literally kill them. These are like trumped-up charges that happen very often. It's not uncommon for that to happen, and police look the other way. How about Catholic and Christians in India? Sometimes can fear the Hindu extremists, where they have experience of harassment, imprisonment, or even violence to them. For those of you who know our seminarian Samson in Nigeria, in the north part of Nigeria, there are people regularly who are kidnapped, who are tortured or made slaves, whether it's for human trafficking or others, or they're literally made they're sexually assaulted. It's awful, awful. This happens more in the world than we realize. But Jesus has a word for those who experience it. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake. The kingdom of heaven is theirs. While we in the U.S. may not experience red martyrdom, there is a growing experience of white martyrdom, suffering for our faith, our beliefs, or the teachings of Jesus Christ through the church. Pope Francis talked about this. He says we have to be careful, be aware of the danger of polite persecution. It seems like a contradiction, doesn't it? Listen to what Pope Francis said. He said, but there is another persecution which is not much spoken about, a persecution camouflaged by culture, by modernity, by progress and disguise. It's a persecution I would ironically describe as polite. It's when someone is persecuted for wanting to manifest the values of the gospel. But it is a persecution against God the Creator and the person of his children. He continues. Every day the powers that be promulgated laws that oblige one to take certain routes so that nations do not follow these indications or do not want to be part of that legislation. They're accused or politely persecuted. It's the kind of persecution that deprives one of freedom or the possibility of a conscientious objection. This is the persecution of the world that takes away our freedom, he wrote, while God made us to be free, to bear witness to the fathers who created us and to Christ who saved us. Be careful, Pope Francis says, to not fall into the spirit of the world. More recently, there's been a radical push against the beliefs of Christians that have been held for 2,000 years. There's been a lot of cultural and political pressure under the guise of, don't be on the wrong side of history. You don't be on the wrong side of where the world is going. Well, depends. Where is it going? If the world's jumping off a cliff, I don't want to jump off with them. No, I don't. I won't. Like the peer pressure that people experience in middle school. Just because everybody, or the vocal minority, says, hey, that's fine, doesn't make it so. Our faith teaches us timeless truths. I'm not so concerned about being on the right side of history if history is going over a cliff. I'd rather be on the right side of eternity. See, for Catholics, the smallest and the weakest among us matter, whether it's the unborn or preborn, and the women in a crisis pregnancy. Not one or the other. That would be blind, or frankly, cruel to the littlest. Do you know what the word fetus means? In Latin, it means little one. Little one. That's all it means. We've come a long way to understanding the science of a child in the womb, and it's easy to lose sight of things, that idea of frankly, of women's health care, but the reality will always be true. The body within your body is not your body. The body within your body is not your body. Both matters. The mother and the child, both matters. That's why Catholics have always been front lines with pregnancy centers, caring for prenatal care, or providing goods for it. The body within your body is not your body. I'll never forget a story of an 18-year-old with Down syndrome. He was at the March for Life, and one of the themes the March for Life was standing up for those with Down syndrome. And he read a statistic on one of the signs. It had a beautiful picture of a little baby boy with Down syndrome. It said it was 8 or 9 out of 10. Their life is taken if they find out they have Down syndrome. And the little boy's like, Mommy, why would they do that? Why would they do that? Why would they do that? And he kept asking Mommy, why would they do that? Why would we do that? My brothers and sisters, every person matters. Every person matters. Whether popular or unpopular, every person matters. What about in the case of the southern states on the border? There's a number of immigrants, including those who have come from other countries. Some are fleeing violence or severe economic poverty. And there's certain laws that have been passed that says you can't give food to those who are coming across the border unless they have papers. And it's like, if someone comes in need of food or water or supplies, we're not checking their papers. We're giving it to them. Are you going to fine us, or because it's illegal, we're going to feed the hungry? It's part of what we do. We're not going to discriminate with this person or that person. Yes, we need to work for good reform of the immigration policy. We have to do that. But we'll never, ever turn a blind eye to someone in need. Or in the case of marriage, all the Catholic Church is saying is there's a uniqueness between one man and one woman that's rooted in nature and ultimately revealed by God. And the government doesn't have a right to redefine a natural institution of marriage. It's not malleable or based on popular opinion. And here's the issue. Once marriage is no longer between one man and one woman, it really can be anything. Already being pushed in society, well, why 2 people and not 3 people? Not just polygamy, but even thruples. Or why does a married couple need a commitment of faithfulness? Why can't it just be kind of an open marriage? Or maybe relationships shouldn't be a lifelong commitment. You see, there's consequences for changing the essence of something God made and God created. Yet isn't that backward? Marriage was made for stability and commitment and willing to sacrifice for one another. It was made for life, love, ultimately that could come forth life. Then you get the problem, frankly, of things like surrogacy, so common, yet that's creating the life of a child on purpose to not have their biological father and mother. On purpose. We're going to deprive someone of their biological father and mother on purpose? Well, adoption can be a beautiful thing. We shouldn't intentionally deprive someone of that relationship between their father and mother just because a person desires a child. When we create our own realities, we create hardships and heartaches and hurt that God never intended any one of us to experience. Yes, blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake. Though the teaching of our faith is popular or unpopular, we should never forget St. Paul's words in 2 Timothy. Preach the word. Be ready in season and out of season. Reprove, rebuke, exhort with great patience and instruction. So let's be encouraged by St. John Paul the Great. Did you ever hear the story when he was first elected Pope? That night there was this Capuchin Franciscan that was in St. Peter's Square, and he was yelling up over and over again, "Coraggio, John Paul! Coraggio! Coraggio, John Paul!" which means, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Well, the next day he got a call into the office that the Pope would like to meet with you, and he's like, uh-oh, what's the Pope going to say? And John Paul looked at him and said, I heard you calling out from St. Peter's Square. I would like you to be the papal preacher. I mean, the one who preaches the Pope. My brothers and sisters, let's have courage. Do not be afraid to be out of place, to be rejected at times, to seem that we don't fit in, even insulted for the sake of the gospel. You see, you and I are called to witness and speak and believe in timeless teachings, whether comfortable or uncomfortable. We have nothing to be afraid of, nothing ever to be afraid of, because this Beatitude has a follow-up message for blessed are those who are persecuted. And what are Jesus' beautiful words? And blessed are you when they revile you and insult you and utter every kind of falsehood because of me. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward will be great in heaven. May God bless you.